Hi, everyone. My name is Aditi.
My name is April.
We are students of Canyon Crest Academy, as you all know, and this is a follow-up lesson to our previous lesson on DNA transcription and translation. So we started off with smaller parts in the cell, which is DNA and RNA, and now we're going to talk about the bigger parts of the cell and the animal cell specifically. So, what is the cell? We all have trillions of cells in our bodies, and we like to think of cells as the building blocks of life because they're the smallest units that carry all of the information and all of the energy required for us to survive. So, as you can see in the image on the left, this is what cells look like under microscopes. So if you've seen a microscope before, or if you've seen cells, we use a lot of tools because cells are really, really small. So we need to see them through a lens. So we use microscopes. And then on the right side, which we'll talk more about in this lesson, is a picture on what a cell has inside of it, what an animal cell has inside of it. So we'll start talking more about that right now.
All right, and before we get into all the different parts of the cell, there is something called the cell theory that you guys should know. And this is really just three statements that apply to all of biology in regards to cells. So the first one is that all organisms are made of cells. The second one is that the cell, like Aditi said, is the basic unit of life in all living things. And three, all cells come from existing cells. So these three statements are true, and they're accepted, and you have to know that they're the basis for biology and life as we know it.
So we talked about parts of the cell. In biology, we call the parts of the cell organelles. So as you can see, organelles are structures that allow the cell to live, grow, and reproduce. So reproduce means to multiply. Like April mentioned, all cells come from other cells. That's because cells reproduce or they multiply. So in the picture below, there are a lot of cell organelles that each have their own function and jobs in the cell, and we're going to start talking about that in this lesson.
So first we have the nucleus of the cell. And if you remember back a couple slides in the picture on the left, the little dot in the middle, the deep colored dot in the middle, that's the nucleus of the cell. And the nucleus, we like to call it the control center of the cell. And this is where all of the cell's DNA is. And as you know, since DNA tells cell what proteins to make and things like that, the nucleus is kind of like a control room where the cell knows what to do based on signals from the nucleus.
So the mitochondria, we like to famously call it the power center or the powerhouse of the cell. And the reason why we call it that is because it gives the cell energy to move and to divide. So the mitochondria kind of looks like a small bean, like you can see in the picture, and they float inside the cell around the nucleus. And so they are really, really important in converting sugars and raw foods and proteins into energy. And that's what gives us the ability to move around and to do daily activities.
And next we have ribosomes. And we talked about these during our DNA translation and transcription presentation. If you remember, this is where translation from RNA to a protein happens. So like I just said, this is where proteins are made from RNA translation, and parts of the cell are also made out of proteins. So these are really important in that they are also part of kind of what like creates the cell itself.
So now the endoplasmic reticulum. This is a really big word, but you'll figure it out eventually. So the endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for transporting nutrients in the cell. So nutrients are things that give us energy. Like when you eat your food, when you eat your lunch or your dinner, you are eating a lot of nutrients so that it gives you energy to move on. So the endoplasmic reticulum transports these nutrients, and there are two types of endoplasmic reticulums. We call them the rough and the smooth endoplasmic reticulums. Now, the rough one have ribosomes on it. And so we just talked about ribosomes, and April explained to you that ribosomes are where the DNA translation process occurs. And we talked about that in our last lesson. So if the endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes on it, it's called a rough endoplasmic reticulum. So then it's easy to understand what a smooth endoplasmic reticulum means, and that is just that it does not have ribosomes on them. You can always call it the ER because we understand the endoplasmic reticulum is a long word to say.
And you guys can't understand rough and smooth just based on looking at it. So if you see the picture, the part of the ER on the right is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And as you can see, since there are ribosomes kind of all over it, it looks rough to like the touch. And if you look at the smooth one on the right, it looks smooth. So that's a way that you guys can remember that. And next is the Golgi complex. So what this does is that it packages, processes, and ships out all of the nutrients that the cell makes. So if you see the picture on the right, if you see, it's kind of like a little maze, but with bulbs on at the ends of the curves. And what happens is that when nutrients have to be packaged and shipped out, they are encased or surrounded in these bulbs, and they break off of the Golgi complex. So if you see all of the small kind of round balls that are floating away, those are nutrients that have been packaged inside the Golgi complex and have now broken off to be shipped to parts of the cell that need it.
So now the lysosome. Lysosomes are really important because what they do is they digest food particles and cell parts. So what does digest mean? It means to break down. So in our stomach, for example, when you eat food, the stomach digests the food, or it breaks it down into energy so that it can be used in the body. And so that's what a lysosome does in the cell. So these small food particles and nutrients are broken down, and the lysosome also gets rid of invasive things inside the cell. So what that means is viruses or bacteria, anything that is bad for the cell or can kill the cell, the lysosome gets rid of them, and it breaks down all this waste. So that's really important for the cell because it gets rid of anything that can be harmful for the cell.
And then we have the vacuole, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. It just stores water, food, and waste. It's really just functions like a storage room inside the cell. And when you see pictures of it, a lot of times what you'll see, like in the picture, it's a little unclear, but it's really kind of just like a sac that sits inside the cell, and it has all of the water, food, and waste in it that can be either digested by the lysosomes or shipped out by the Golgi complex. Yeah, it's really just a storage room.
So thank you for watching our lesson. If you have any questions for us, let us know. And so this lesson was about animal cells. Of course, Miss Georgiana and her students in Hong Kong have made a lesson on plant cells with the Lily dissection video. So once you watch that video as well, you'll start to understand that animal cells and plant cells have some differences and are also the same in certain ways as well. So watch both videos, write down any questions you have, and we look forward to answering them at our next meet. Thank you, guys.